Now, how do I update a template? Well, certainly we're going to have operating system fixes and patches, and we may want to make some configuration changes to the guest operating system and the applications within a template so that when we deploy new VMs from that template, the new VMs have the benefit of whatever changes, whatever updates I've made to the template. Now, a template, even though the only difference between a template and a virtual machine is the letter T, a template is not considered a virtual machine. So we cannot power the thing on. What we'll want to do instead is right-click on the template, select Convert to Virtual Machine, power that virtual machine on, make those changes, shut that virtual machine down, and convert it back to a template. Okay. A recommendation that we make here is to take the virtual machine and place it on some sort of isolated network so that it doesn't accidentally become discovered by whatever systems are in place in your environment and get utilized. Okay? That's an option, of course. If that is not a realistic scenario in your environment, that's just fine. Once we have our template in place, it's time to deploy new virtual machines from this template. Simply right-click on the template, select New VM from Template, and you go through a wizard. And that wizard has you doing things that are very similar to the brand new VM from Scratch wizard, which says, hey, we're going to name the virtual machine, select the VMs and templates folder, select a compute resource, a cluster, or an ESXi host, select the data store, and then we're going to have some clone options that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Now, when it comes to cloning a virtual machine, it's very similar to deploying a new VM from a template, except instead of starting from a template, we're starting from a virtual machine. Right-click on that virtual machine, go to the Clone menu, and select Clone to Virtual Machine. Once again, this VM can be powered on or it can be powered off. We'll run through the same sort of wizard, giving options, making changes, setting the name, choosing the cluster or the ESXi host, selecting the data store, and there we go. Now, I mentioned before that when you clone a virtual machine or you deploy a VM from a template, we don't want to have two VMs in the same environment be bit for bit identical. There are certainly some things that would cause conflicts and cause issues in the environment. Mostly things around identifying the virtual machine, like its host name, the virtual machine name itself in the inventory, and also on the networking side. MAC addresses on virtual NICs, for example, IP addresses, and so on. So we've got to make sure that every new VM be slightly different from one another. And this is where the guest operating system customization process comes in. Okay? These are those clone options that appear in the wizard. What we have the opportunity to do is, as we're deploying a new virtual machine, either from a clone or based on a template, we can rename the computer, set up the networking settings. On the Windows side, we can do some licensing things, and we can also make modifications to the Windows SID, or security identifier, if that's something that's important to us. Okay. We can do this from scratch. Every time we deploy a new VM, we can go through a little wizard and answer some questions, or we can answer these questions in advance and create what we call a guest operating system customization specification. That's a little bit of a mouthful, but what it means is that we can save the answers to the wizard in vCenter's operating system and then deploy those or select that specification each time we deploy a Windows or a Linux virtual machine. Then when you hit the clone options, you have the opportunity to customize the operating system. Also note that you can customize the virtual machine hardware and power on the virtual machine after creation. Okay? But when you choose to customize the operating system, you can then look into vCenter's database, choose the customization specification that you had created earlier. That customization specification, by the way, can be found on vCenter's homepage. And then that custom spec will be applied to the VM. Now, creating a full clone, like we've talked about, is a great thing for us to be able to do. But a couple of years back, VMware invented a new technology called instant clones. Instant clones are a really amazing technology that uses what we call a parent virtual machine, a powered-on virtual machine from which to spawn off another virtual machine process. It works like this, and it's got some very specific use cases. It's not something that today we can do from the vSphere UI client. It's something that we can do on the command line by utilizing VMware's APIs. But I want to talk to you about this so you can get an idea as to what some of the capabilities around instant clones are. And then you'll see if you choose to use systems like Horizon Virtual Desktops, instant clones are the primary way that we deploy new virtual machines over and over and over and over again in just a couple of seconds apiece. What we're going to do is we're going to start with a parent virtual machine. Okay? This is a virtual machine that uses the basis for child clones. This virtual machine is powered on, and it's running on each ESXi host that we want to be able to create instant clones on. What we'll do is we'll quiesce this parent VM, meaning we'll stop all operations. No CPU activity, no changes to the memory, no changes to its virtual disks. We'll then take that memory footprint of that VM that's stored in ESXi, and we'll take the VMDK, the virtual disk, and we're going to place those in read-only mode. Now, a set of memory for a VM and a virtual disk in read-only mode doesn't do a VM much good, but it does allow us to spawn new virtual machine processes pointing to that same set of memory and that same virtual disk. That virtual machine now is sitting in the exact same state as the parent VM was in when we quiesced it, meaning it will be powered on, ready for users to log in, ready for use, and so on. Meaning no boot process required for each of these child VMs. So these child VMs are then spawned, and we need to begin working in these child VMs. Well, every time they want to write, for example, a new block of data to storage, or write a new page of memory, we'll execute a copy on write procedure so that these new child VMs get their own unique set of pages of memory and blocks on disk. So each child VM now gets its own unique RAM and a Delta VMDK file that is then tied to the parent space disk that simply contains the changes that the child VM has made to the disk. Now the child VM can use not only its unique memory and Delta disk, but the shared memory and the shared base disk from the parent. This process makes things really super fast for us to create brand new virtual machines. There are a number of use cases for instant clones in the environment, and as time goes on, we'll see those use cases become more and more frequent and hopefully added to the environments so we can better make use of them with the simple UI as opposed to command line. But we have use cases including virtual desktop infrastructure, container hosts, big data, Hadoop worker nodes. DevOps has the ability to use this for testing systems very, very quickly without having to wait for an entire clone process to build duplicated virtual disks, and so on. Okay. In vSphere 6.7, we introduced this feature through a set of API calls. In vSphere 7, we added to this the ability to instant clone and customize a guest operating system on the Linux side. So you can see that as time goes on, VMware is continuing to add features and functionality to the instant clone process. If this is something that's interesting to you, have a look at the set of APIs and also have a look at the Horizon environment, because this is something that's done every day with Horizon 7 and going forward. Well, it's time to do a lab now with clones and templates. Lab number 16 has us building a virtual machine template from an existing VM, creating a custom specification, and then deploying a virtual machine and utilizing that custom specification. I hope you enjoy this lab. And that does it for this lesson on templates and clones, where we've learned the difference between a template and clone. We've looked at instant clones, and we now know certainly some use cases for all of this stuff. And we know that we're going to be using this stuff on a daily basis in our environment. Now, when we come back, we're going to look at a way for us to take our templates and manage them with vCenter, syndicating or sharing those templates with other vCenter servers in your environment. So when we come back, we're going to be looking at content libraries. We'll talk to you very soon. Thank you.